definitions, assumptions, and limitations. In this section you should provide definitions of all such terms, being used in the statement of the problem, as are ambiguous and likely to be misinterprets. The definition of these terms helps sharpen the frame of reference with which the researcher approaches the problem. Let us take, as an example, the following research proposal. Involvement of the students of classes 9 and X in the extracurricular activities adversely affects their academic performance in board's examination. The researcher must explain what he means by the term involvement. Is watching a hockey match played between his school land and out-of-town school as part of the district hockey championship termed as involvement? He must clearly lay down the criterion for classifying students into the group involved in extracurricular activities and the group not involved in such activities. Apart from laying a cutoff point, namely hours per week spent in extracurricular activities, the researcher should also define the term extracurricular activities. What would be taken as a measure of academic performance shall also have to be defined. Would it be the total marks, percentage of marks, division obtained, or only pass and fail? It would be clear that definition of these terms would determine what data are to be collected and organized. Assumptions in research refer to the underlying beliefs, ideas, or values that researchers hold about the nature of the phenomena they are studying or the methods they are using to study them. These assumptions guide the research process and help researchers make decisions about what data to collect, how to analyze it, and how to interpret their findings. Assumptions can be divided into two types, explicit and implicit. Explicit assumptions are those that are stated clearly and directly by the researcher, while implicit assumptions are those that are not stated explicitly but are nevertheless present in the research process. Some common assumptions in research include 1. Ontological assumptions. These refer to the researcher's beliefs about the nature of reality and how it can be studied. For example, a researcher might assume that reality is objective and can be studied using quantitative methods. 2. Epistemological assumptions. These refer to the researcher's beliefs about how knowledge is acquired and what counts as evidence. For example, a researcher might assume that knowledge is acquired through systematic observation and that quantitative data is more reliable than qualitative data. 3. Methodological assumptions. These refer to the researcher's beliefs about how research should be conducted, including the methods that should be used and the criteria for evaluating their validity. For example, a researcher might assume that experiments are the best way to test causal relationships. It is important for researchers to be aware of their assumptions and to critically evaluate them to ensure that they are not biased or limiting their ability to understand the phenomena they are studying. This can involve reflecting on their own beliefs and biases, engaging with diverse perspectives and theories, and using multiple methods and sources of data to triangulate their findings. Thus, in the example considered above, one of the assumptions would be that the time spent on extracurricular activities would otherwise have been devoted to studies. Another, more basic question, would be that the academic performance is directly related with the time devoted for studies. The sort of data on which the study would be based does not directly establish the truth of any of these propositions, and hence these can only be assumed. Otherwise, it would not be possible to conclude that involvement in curricular activities affects the academic performance. The researcher should clearly state the limitations of shortcomings of his study. This does not, in any way, reduce the significance of his study. It, on the other hand, indicates that he is conscious of what he proposes to do and how far, in the solution of the problem, his methodology would take him. In short, this indicates that he knows what he is doing, and this builds the confidence of the users of the results of his study. The limitations of the study often stem from the design of the study. Limitations in research refer to factors or constraints that may impact the validity, reliability, or generalizability of a study's findings. Limitations can arise at various stages of the research process, including study design, data collection, analysis, and interpretation. It is important for researchers to acknowledge and address limitations in their studies to ensure that their findings are accurate, credible, and useful for informing future research and practice. Some common limitations in research include: 1. Sample size and representativeness. Small or non-representative samples may limit the generalizability of a study's findings to larger populations. 2. Bias. Bias in study design, data collection, or analysis may lead to inaccurate or misleading results. Common types of bias include selection bias, measurement bias, and publication bias. 3. Confounding variables. Confounding variables are variables that are related to both the independent and dependent variables, making it difficult to determine causality. 4. Limitations in measurement. Inaccurate or unreliable measures may lead to flawed conclusions. This can include limitations in self-report measures, observer bias, or limitations in the measurement of physiological variables. 5. Funding and resources. Limitations in funding and resources may impact the scope and quality of a study's design and execution. 6. Ethical considerations. Ethical considerations may constrain the design and execution of a study, such as limitations on the use of human or animal subjects. Researchers should address limitations in their studies by acknowledging them in their publications, discussing their potential impact on the results, and providing recommendations for future research. This can help to strengthen the credibility and usefulness of their findings and contribute to the advancement of knowledge in their field. In the study proposed in PAN 5.0, no attempt seems to have been made to control the academic achievement of those involved in extracurricular activities at the beginning of the research, that is, when they enter into Class 9. Neither any attempt seems to have been made to take into account differences in academic aptitude and motivational factors among the two groups, those involved and those not involved in extracurricular activities. This limitation would not be operative, however, if the researcher tried to equate the two groups on these factors or if the design permits analysis of variance on account of these factors.